Welcome to this exhibition of works by Pearl Jones Tranter. I'm Renee Conlin, Executive Director of the Vallejo Community Arts Foundation, and we're in a beautiful space here at 710 Marin Street. This was recently renovated by Robert Litwin and Timothy McDonald, and they have graciously allowed us to use this for the exhibition until it is sold. So thank you to Tim and Robert. I'm very pleased that today a good friend of Pearl's was able to join us, Rick Mariani. And Rick established himself as one of the top wine product photographers in the industry. Hundreds of his photographs were featured in Wine Spectator, in their monthly food menu, as well as scores of cover photos. He has been a professor at Solano Community College and Napa Valley College, teaching advanced photography. And I know that he'll have many interesting stories and insights about her work. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, my name is Rick Mariani. I moved here to Vallejo back in the year 2000 from San Francisco, where I was born and raised. And I had a photo studio actually on Potrero Hill in San Francisco. And I ended up buying a building here on Tennessee Street where I had my studio and my home for quite a number of years. I met Pearl through a group of artists right down the street here. It was called the Vallejo Artists Guild. And we used to do a lot of different shows, et cetera, there. And in 2006, I did a photo exposition of portraits that I did of about 20 different Vallejo artists, and Pearl was one of them. Actually, I have that photograph here when you first enter into the gallery here of Pearl. And since then, Pearl and I became really close friends, and we would see each other most mornings at Java Jack's. A lot of us would gather in the morning, have coffee, read the paper, and talk about various things that were going on, et cetera. And we just became really, really fast friends through that and through our art as well. Showing our work at different galleries and seeing Pearl's work over the years and how it transformed over the years was something that was of real interest to me because of my background in photography. And Pearl's background, she had 2 master's degrees in art from the University of California in Berkeley. And she was quite a talented photographer. She started shooting film and doing black and white darkroom work, et cetera. And then she learned how to use digital, and she learned Photoshop and Lightroom, et cetera, and printing because she was always taking classes at Berkeley City College because they had these enormous printers. And she would print all of her work on these printers, have them stretched, she'd print them on canvas and have them stretched from this one person in Oakland. She would take all her work over there. And so a lot of the work that's here in the gallery is work that she produced and printed herself on these big printers. So she was always learning, always taking classes at Berkeley. And she took these classes over and over again so that she would have the use of the printers. And because of that, she just gathered so much. We have 100 pieces of her work in this particular show. And some of them are really, quite amazing. She was really, really good at photographing architecture. And so she was always out on Mare Island. She would walk around Mare Island, and she was a short woman, and she had a cane a lot of the times, and she would be walking around. And she just had an incredible eye for composition. And that was one of the things that always amazed me about her. She started doing, after learning some of these techniques in Photoshop, she started doing a series of these photographs where she would marry a few images together. She initially called them duets rather than, doing separate canvases and doing, 2 images separated. She would actually, combine them on one particular canvas. And she called them duets. And then she started adding additional things to that. Borders, some were just a plain gray border. Sometimes they were outlined in black. I think this one is like that, where it has an outline in black. But then she started getting even more colorful, and she would add, like trees or other parts of a building that she would put around the background, and you'll see some different variations of what she did over time. The one nice thing, historically, she has images of Mare Island, of buildings that no longer exist. They've since been torn down. And because of that, this is really a historical record of Mare Island. Again, her eye and her imagery, and the way that she was able to marry these images together shows an amazing history of these particular pieces. And some of the places around the side here are abandoned buildings, and you'll see graffiti, and just even in a place that's totally abandoned, it has graffiti on the walls. She still had the ability. There's one image that's around the corner that has an orange chair that is compositionally, it's just a beautiful piece. It's one of my favorites of the graffiti pieces. And it just, calls attention to this orange chair in the foreground and this beautiful light streaming through the window, causing the shadows on the ground. So she just, would always look for things like that. This specific one is such a graphic image. And again, it marries the trees on one side with the trees from another down below here. These, I believe, were done in New Mexico. She would travel to New Mexico because she had a daughter that lived in Taos, and she would go down there driving herself, even in her late 80s, and she would get in her car and she would drive her stick shift Subaru all the way down to New Mexico. And she would stay sometimes at different national parks on the way, and she would always be photographing, always had her little camera with her. And then she had another daughter who lives up in Bend, Oregon, and she would go up there. Matter of fact, she went up there not too long before she passed away. So she was still driving and still, going to classes and still photographing even at her advanced age. Thank God that we have records of her work, because it's really quite incredible. But she, from her early days when she was going to Berkeley and she took photo classes, she did a lot of stuff where she actually painted emulsions on canvas, did portraits. She did created furniture, and she did some sculpture. So she was just a multi-talented artist. One of the things that I really enjoyed not only was coffee in the morning, our little coffee clatch that we would do, but there was a group of us that before the pandemic would meet every Thursday, and we would always go to a different restaurant in Vallejo for lunch. We would always meet at noon, and we called it the Golden Girls. And we would go and meet, and Pearl was always part of that. And so, we would always pretty much sit together. Sometimes Rick and Richard would drive her. Sometimes she would just drive herself, and we would go to these different restaurants all the time. And it was a really good time to see what was going on for the weekend, et cetera. And I miss that, from the pandemic. We can't do that anymore. And I can't wait till everything opens up again so that we could do that. Pearl was a well-traveled woman. She went all over the world. She lived in Italy for a while. She lived in Germany. She traveled to the Far East. She traveled to Syria and places like that. So she was always going to, Turkey and Belarus and all these different places. And she had quite a travel itinerary, and she always took photographs. So from the days of film to, nowadays where she's shooting digitally, she really just kept adapting her craft and learning and doing more. She just always was creating. So this area is what we call her Barbie series. And There used to be an artist who was downtown Vallejo, and we used to call her the Barbie lady. She had a showroom of all these different Barbie dolls that she would make costumes and put them in different scenarios, and it was really quite incredible. She moved to Oregon, and during that time, Pearl started also photographing these Barbies. But what she would do in a lot of these images is, rather than use a camera, she would actually take these things and put them on a scanner, and she would scan these images. And then some of them were done all in one scan, like this particular image, asparagus behind the Barbie dolls, and this, these little costumes made of, muslin, and then this little motorcycle. So she would do these things and, just, creatively put them on the scanner and come up with these different scenarios. I mean, here you have asparagus, little jelly bellies going around, and, the Barbie dolls. And then she started using fabrics and wallpaper fabrics, etc., and scan those pieces and then marry them together as background. This particular image was my favorite in the show, and it did sell, and a good friend of mine purchased it. So I get to see it still. It's just a great piece. But it kind of reminds me of the colorful work of Frida Kahlo. And, that's where I go when I see this particular image. And then another one is her writing. She would actually, in a lot of the old work that she did, she would actually write on the edges of different photographs and would tell you a little bit about the piece or where they were. She had, an incredible ability to use the spoken word along with her imagery to do things. So this is the image that I was talking about in one of the abandoned buildings on Fair Island, with the graffiti, et cetera, but the one with the chair that I had mentioned. And that chair is such an important piece. It draws your attention, the first thing that you see, and then your vision goes and starts looking at the background and the strong sunlight coming through the windows, even the little things, pieces of trash that are on the floor. Here's a good example of some of the abandoned buildings out on Mare Island. Some of these no longer exist. So they're, historically, these are really important imagery because you could see some of the abandoned structures. And again, she did things called duets and put them. Here's one here where there's two images that are put together. And usually when she did that, she would have a little stretch of something right, from one side to another. So this obviously is not one scene. This is a separate image, and this is a separate image, and this is a separate image. And it looks married together, but it's not. It's pretty interesting imagery. Here's one here, again, that has three images. And then she started using texture in the background of these particular images from another building. So instead of just doing, something that was not associated with this, she actually took some of this corrugated metal in the background. And then she actually, because canvas is stretched, a lot of times she would just put a color and stretch on the edges. Like this one has gray that stretches around. This one has brown that stretches around. But this one, she put clouds and then stretched it because you need some material to stretch the canvas. So there's a variety of techniques that she ended up learning and toying with and playing. I love this image of the basketball hoop, kind of decrepit basketball hoop, and it's the buildings behind. These are all torn down now. They were all burned. You can see that the heat was burned on that particular building at the time. And then again, some of the doorways, these were the metal doorways. She did three images there where she put them together. These were another one here with some of the Fair Island work. So I just love her imagery. They're all really colorful. This was one that says, Miss Libby Shipley of Red Bluff sits in a cafe in Chico, California, aware that the best art to be seen in town is not on the brick wall to her left. So that's the image that's in the center, but then she put it over another image, again, mixing imagery together. So we have 100 pieces in this show. They are all for sale and they're priced very reasonably. So I think it's a great opportunity for you to purchase a piece of Pearl's work to have